Hello, dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's start our video. Grace Miller stood in her kitchen, the afternoon light pouring through the wide windows of her countryside home, the home she and her late husband had designed together, brick by brick. It had been her sanctuary for years, the one place where silence meant peace, not loneliness. That calm was interrupted by the sudden vibration of her phone. When she saw the caller ID, Ethan, she hesitated before answering. Her younger brother had a knack for calling only when he needed something. Grace. Ethan's voice came through bright and fast, full of excitement. You're not going to believe it. I'm getting married. For a second, her heart lifted. She'd been waiting for Ethan to settle down, to find some direction. That's wonderful, she said sincerely. Who's the lucky woman? Vanessa. You probably know her. She runs that lifestyle channel on Instagram. She's incredible, Grace. You'll love her. Grace smiled politely, though she didn't follow influencers. I'm happy for you. When's the wedding? That's what I wanted to talk about, he said, his tone shifting into something familiar, persuasive. We've been looking at venues, but everything's booked or insanely expensive. Then I thought your place. It's perfect. The garden, the space, the view. It's exactly the kind of setting Vanessa wants, just for one day. We'll handle everything, I promise. Grace felt her stomach tighten. Her home wasn't just a house, it was her last connection to the life she'd built with her husband. Letting someone else, even family, take over it for a wedding felt invasive. Still, she could hear Ethan's excitement. It had been years since they'd done anything together that wasn't about money or crisis. One day, she asked carefully. One day, he swore. We'll clean up, handle the guests, the catering. You won't lift a finger. Come on, Grace. It would mean a lot. Her mind flashed with old memories, him as a kid, tagging along, making her laugh, promising he'd pay her back someday. She sighed softly. All right, Ethan. You can have it. But everything goes back to normal the next morning. No exceptions. You're the best, Grace. Seriously, you won't regret it, he said, already halfway off the phone, his voice fading with enthusiasm. When the call ended, she stood in silence for a long time, staring out the window. The house, bathed in the gold of evening, seemed to breathe around her, steady and safe. She whispered to herself, just one day. Days later, her driveway filled with vans and workers. Wedding planners carried mood boards and fabric swatches. Caterers unloaded crates of champagne and designer plates. Photographers scouted for angles. Grace walked through her once quiet home, feeling displaced in her own space. Vanessa arrived mid-morning, radiant and commanding. She wore sunglasses and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Grace. Oh my God, this place is divine. We might need to move a few things for the shoot, okay? Before Grace could respond, Vanessa had already directed her assistants to rearrange the living room furniture, replacing Grace's framed photographs with flower arrangements and branded props. Ethan followed behind, grinning like a schoolboy. It's just for one day, Grace. Don't be so uptight. Grace forced a smile. Right. Just one day. But as the hours passed, she watched her life transform into a movie set. The wedding team draped lights over the trees, built a floral archway near the patio, and set up a bar where her husband's old workbench used to stand. Neighbors stopped by to gossip, whispering about the spectacle. Ethan Miller's wedding looks like a royal event. Grace nodded politely, though inside, she felt something quietly turning. When the wedding day arrived, the house looked unrecognizable, shimmering under strings of fairy lights and filled with laughter and champagne toasts. Guests in tailored suits and sequin dresses danced across her lawn. Vanessa glided through the crowd like a star, every movement filmed by her camera crew. Grace, come join us for a picture, she called, pulling her into a photo, then immediately shifting her attention back to the lens. Make sure we get the background. That house is just perfect. Grace smiled faintly for the camera, but her chest felt heavy. Every corner of her home was being claimed, even if just for show. She found herself retreating toward the edge of the party, watching as strangers drank on her porch and laughed under her trees. During the speeches, Ethan stood up, glass raised high. "To my beautiful wife," he said, beaming. "And to our dream home. The place where everything begins." Applause erupted. Vanessa kissed him. Grace froze. Our dream home? She waited for the joke, the laugh, the correction. None came. Ethan just smiled at her from across the garden, as if daring her to say something. She forced herself to smile, nodding along with the laughter of others. But as she looked around, at Vanessa posing in her kitchen, at guests spilling wine on her rugs, at Ethan's careless grin, she realized something she couldn't yet name. It wasn't just one day. It never was. The morning after the wedding, the house smelled faintly of wine, roses, and burnt candle wax. Grace woke early, tying her hair into a loose bun as she prepared to clean up the aftermath of the celebration. She expected to find only silence, maybe a few empty glasses on the porch, petals scattered across the lawn. Instead, she heard laughter. From the direction of the living room came Ethan's voice, followed by the higher, musical tone of Vanessa. When Grace stepped into the room, she froze. Ethan sat on the couch in a silk robe, coffee mug in hand, watching a rerun of some late-night comedy. Vanessa lounged beside him, scrolling on her phone, her wedding hair still half intact. "You're still here?" Grace asked, trying to sound casual though her tone came out sharper than intended. Ethan looked up lazily. "Morning, sis." "Yeah, we're just recovering. Yesterday was wild." Grace blinked. "I thought you were heading out early today." "Later," he said, stretching his arms. "We just need a bit to get ourselves together. Don't worry, we'll be out before you know it." Vanessa smiled without looking up. "Your shower has the best pressure, by the way. I might take another one before we go." Grace bit her lip. She wanted to protest, but something about Ethan's tone, that breezy confidence, made her pause. Fine, she thought. Let them rest. A few more hours won't kill me. She decided to step out for groceries, mostly to breathe. The house suddenly felt too small with them inside. She drove to town, bought milk, bread, and some fresh flowers to replace the wilted ones from the wedding. It took her just under an hour. When she turned onto her street, she spotted it immediately. A moving truck parked in her driveway. Two men were unloading boxes. She slowed her car, confusion tightening her chest. Then she saw Ethan standing by the truck, directing the movers with one hand while holding a clipboard in the other. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, stepping out of the car. Ethan's face lit up with an easy grin. "Grace, you're back just in time." "For what?" He motioned toward the boxes. "We figured since everything's already here and it's just wasted space most of the year, we might as well move a few of our things in." Grace's heart began to pound. "Move in? Ethan, what are you talking about?" He gave a small laugh, as though she were the one being dramatic. "Grace, about the house. Remember when Dad was sick? He talked about wanting this place to be ours, not just yours. I talked to Mom's lawyer. Technically, this is family property. It just hasn't been sorted out legally yet." Grace stared at him, speechless. "Ethan, that's not true. I bought this land years after Dad passed. It's in my name alone. There's no family property." Vanessa appeared then, stepping out of the doorway in a pale robe, coffee cup in hand. "Babe, did you tell her about the mail?" "Oh, right." Ethan turned to Grace. "We already updated our address with the post office. Just easier that way." Vanessa smiled sweetly. "We're not trying to take over, Grace. You can even stay in the guest house if you want. It's really just about sharing space, families supporting each other, you know?" Grace felt her throat close. "This isn't a conversation," she said, her voice trembling now. "You're not moving into my home. Get your things out now." Ethan's smile faded. "Don't make this difficult. It's as much my home as yours. I have the paperwork to prove it." "What paperwork?" she demanded. He waved a few sheets in the air. "You'll see." Grace stepped back, realizing the situation was spiraling into something she didn't understand. Something planned. Vanessa crossed her arms, expression smug, as if this moment had been rehearsed. By nightfall, the tension was unbearable. Grace locked herself in her bedroom, listening to the muffled sounds of Ethan and Vanessa laughing downstairs. Her sanctuary had turned into enemy territory. She slept poorly and woke to something worse. When she tried to open her front door the next morning, her key didn't fit. Panic flooded her chest. She tried again, harder, jiggling the lock. Nothing. Her own key, useless. From inside, she heard footsteps. The door opened slightly and Ethan appeared in casual clothes, holding a mug of coffee. "Oh, hey. Yeah, about the locks. We had them changed." Vanessa felt uncomfortable knowing how many people had keys during the wedding. Grace could barely form words. "You changed my locks? On my house." "Calm down, Grace. It's temporary," he said, tone dripping with false reason. "We're all family here. Let's not turn this into something ugly." Her voice cracked. "You need to leave. Both of you." Ethan closed the door halfway. "I'm not leaving." Then he shut it in her face. Grace stood there on her own porch, shaking. She called the police. When the officers arrived, she explained everything. The house was hers. She had proof. Her brother had changed the locks and refused to leave. The officers listened, exchanged looks, then asked Ethan for his version. He calmly produced a set of papers, the same ones he'd waved before, claiming joint ownership. "Your Honor, ma'am," the senior officer said carefully, "this appears to be a civil matter. We can't remove them without a court order." Grace stared at him in disbelief. "You're telling me I can't go into my own home?" "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You'll have to resolve this through legal channels." As the police car pulled away, Grace stood in her driveway, watching the lights fade. The house loomed behind her, her house, now occupied by two people she once called family. That night she checked into a small roadside motel, her suitcase half-packed, her eyes swollen from tears. The room smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. She sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at her contact list. When she finally called her friend Marlene, her voice came out flat. "He's taken everything, Marlene. My house. My keys. Even the police can't help." There was a pause on the other end. "Grace, you need a lawyer. A real one. Don't wait. This isn't just family drama, it's theft." Grace closed her eyes. Her home, the symbol of everything she'd built from grief, was gone. But as the night deepened and her anger slowly sharpened into resolve, one thought echoed in her mind. "He thinks I'll give up. He's wrong." The morning light streamed through the thin motel curtains, but Grace didn't move. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, another message from a friend checking in, another reminder of everything she'd lost. She ignored it. For a long time, she just sat in silence, staring at the faded wallpaper, replaying Ethan's smug expression in her mind. When she finally picked up her phone, it wasn't to text anyone back. It was to search for a lawyer. By noon, she was sitting across from Linda Harris, a real estate attorney whose office smelled faintly of lemon and paper. Linda was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair tied in a neat bun and eyes that missed nothing. She listened quietly as Grace explained everything, from the wedding to the fake documents, to being locked out of her own home. When Grace slid the papers across the desk, Linda put on her glasses and studied them closely. A few minutes later, she looked up. "These are fake," she said simply. Grace blinked. "You're sure?" Linda tapped the corner of the page. "Completely. They're clever. Someone scanned an old estate transfer document, changed the names and dates, and reprinted it to look authentic. But they used the wrong notary seal. And this signature," she pointed. "It's traced. Probably from one of your father's old papers." Grace's stomach dropped. "He forged Dad's signature?" "I'm afraid so." Grace pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. For years, she defended Ethan. To her husband, her friends, even herself. Every lie, every debt, every excuse, she'd brushed aside because he was family. And now he'd taken the one thing that truly belonged to her. Linda's tone softened slightly. "You're not the first person to trust the wrong family member. But you will be one of the few who gets everything back." Grace looked up, eyes wet. "How?" "By letting them believe they've won," Linda said, leaning back in her chair. "They've already stepped into the trap. We just need them to dig deeper." Grace frowned. What do I do? For now? Nothing. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. Linda's calmness was unsettling at first, almost cold, but it steadied Grace. For the first time in days, she felt something she hadn't since losing her home: control. Within the week, Linda filed an injunction that froze the property title, preventing any sale, transfer, or rental under Ethan's name. It was a silent strike, one Ethan wouldn't even notice until it mattered. Meanwhile, Grace began documenting everything. She took photos of the house before the wedding, screenshots of texts where Ethan had called it her place, and messages from neighbors who'd witnessed the moving truck. Ethan, oblivious, was busy celebrating online. His social media accounts filled with pictures of him and Vanessa standing in Grace's garden, tagged with captions like, "Our new forever home red heart, #new beginnings, #dreamhouse." Vanessa filmed cooking videos in Grace's kitchen, her voice cheerful and false as she told her followers about manifesting your dream life. Grace watched it all from her motel room but didn't respond, not even when commenters began to ask why her name was still listed on the property deed. Linda had warned her, don't react. The more you stay silent, the more careless they'll get. And she was right. Within a month, Ethan and Vanessa began hosting parties at the house, expensive, loud, and very public. The guest list was full of influencers and minor celebrities. Grace's once quiet home was now a backdrop for people who didn't even know her name. But Linda saw an opportunity. They're establishing a public pattern of control, she explained. Perfect evidence for your case. Grace collected it all: videos, photos, even one clip from a guest's live stream where Ethan proudly said, "It's finally ours. Took long enough, but we got it." Linda smiled when she saw that. He just confessed ownership. That's gold. Weeks later, Linda called Grace into her office again. "It's time," she said simply. "What do you mean?" "I'm arranging a private meeting. We'll make it look like you're ready to settle, to give up. I'll record everything. If he's arrogant enough, he'll admit the forgery himself." Grace hesitated. "Won't he see through it?" Linda smiled. "Men like your brother never think they're being outsmarted, especially by women they've underestimated." 2 days later, they met in a neutral space, a small conference room in a downtown building. Ethan arrived first, wearing a casual blazer and that same confident grin. Vanessa sat beside him, scrolling on her phone, looking bored. Grace entered quietly, hands clasped in front of her. She looked fragile, deliberately so. Linda had told her to let them believe she was defeated. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Grace." Finally ready to talk sense. Grace didn't meet his eyes. "I just want this to be over, Ethan. I can't keep fighting you." He smiled, exchanging a glance with Vanessa. "Smart move. You were never built for conflict." "I'm willing to give you a portion," Grace said softly. "Maybe 50% of the property if you admit the documents you made were fake. We can file something honest and move forward." Vanessa scoffed. "You're still hung up on that? You're lucky we're even offering to share." Ethan chuckled. "Grace, come on. You'll cave eventually. You always do. You're too soft for this game." Grace looked up then, meeting his gaze, and for the first time, there was no fear in her eyes. "Maybe I was," she said quietly, "but not anymore." Linda gave a small, almost invisible nod. The microphone clipped to her pen had captured everything. Ethan didn't notice. He was too busy talking. "Whatever, Grace. You can drag this out, but you'll lose. Everyone already thinks it's our house." "Then I guess we'll see what the court thinks," Linda said suddenly, her calm voice cutting through the room like a blade. Ethan's expression faltered. "Wait, what?" Grace stood up, her chair scraping the floor. "You should have known better than to use Dad's name for your lies." They left the room together, Linda's folder tucked under her arm. Inside it was the recording, the fake papers, the posts, the witnesses, everything they needed. As they stepped into the sunlight, Grace felt something she hadn't in weeks, relief mixed with quiet fury. Linda turned to her, a faint smile on her lips. "They think they've built a fortress," she said. "But all we need is one crack." Grace nodded slowly. "And we just found it." Grace enters the courtroom with quiet resolve, her heart steady but heavy. Across the aisle, Ethan and Vanessa sit surrounded by cameras and whispers. Vanessa in designer white, Ethan smirking like he's still the hero of his own story. Reporters murmur about the influencer couple's real estate scandal, but Grace tunes it all out. This moment isn't for the public. It's for the truth. When the judge calls the case, Ethan's lawyer launches into his performance, arguing that family verbal agreements had long implied the property was shared. He gestures passionately toward Ethan, painting him as a devoted son carrying out their late father's wishes. Grace watches, numb but composed. Every life feels like another betrayal, but Linda's calm beside her is grounding, steady as stone. Then Linda stands. Her voice cuts through the courtroom like clean glass. Your Honor, my client, Grace Miller, designed and built that house from the ground up. The title deed, the mortgage, the tax records, the architectural permits, every document bears her name. What the defendants possess are forged copies. She steps forward, placing the evidence file on the judge's bench, then clicks a button on her tablet. The recording plays. Ethan's voice fills the room. You'll cave eventually. You're too soft. That house was ours before you even finished the roof. There's a stunned silence. Even Vanessa's confident posture crumbles. Ethan shifts in his seat, his smirk gone. His lawyer fumbles for words, but it's over. The judge listens quietly, face stern. When the verdict comes, it's decisive. The forged papers are declared void. Ethan and Vanessa are ordered to vacate Grace's property immediately. The judge also authorizes an investigation into document fraud, meaning criminal charges are likely. Vanessa bursts into tears, clutching her designer purse. You said it was legal, she hisses at Ethan. Ethan snaps back. You were the one who wanted this house for your content. Their argument spirals, echoing across the courtroom. Grace doesn't move. She only watches, eyes calm, as the people who turned her kindness into a weapon unravel before her. When Ethan finally turns to her, shouting, You've destroyed our family, Grace stands and meets his gaze. Her voice is soft, but it carries.
No, Ethan.
You did that when you tried to steal what wasn't yours. For a moment, the courtroom is utterly still. The bailiff escorts them out, cameras flash, and Grace finally exhales. Linda places a reassuring hand on her arm. It's over, she says. But Grace knows it's more than that. It's justice, quiet, patient, and complete. Weeks pass before the echoes of the courtroom fade. Grace returns home to find the moving company removing the last of Ethan and Vanessa's belongings. Boxes labeled with their names are stacked near the gate, symbols of all the chaos they brought into her life. The rooms are quiet again, dust motes floating in the golden afternoon light. It feels strange to walk through her home without the tension, the intrusion, the constant performance that had filled every corner. When Linda visits that evening, she takes in the calm around them. You handled that with more grace than most, she says, smiling faintly. Grace looks around at the space she built, the polished wood floors, the sunlight spilling through the big windows she once designed with her husband. I didn't want revenge, she replies softly. I just wanted peace. The following weeks bring the kind of fallout Grace never expected. Their mother, heartbroken by what Ethan did, calls her in tears. I believed his stories, she admits. But you did the right thing. Grace doesn't gloat. She just listens. She's too tired for bitterness. Ethan vanishes from social media, his luxury life suddenly erased. Stories begin circulating online about the forgery case, but Grace refuses to read them. Vanessa files for divorce and moves out of state, her influencer followers turning cold. The empire they tried to build on lies collapses quietly, not with drama, but with silence. Grace spends her days repairing what truly matters, her trust in herself. She replants her garden, a symbol of starting again. Every bloom feels like a small victory. One evening, she sits on her porch with a cup of tea. The sunset paints the countryside in soft orange and violet hues. A moving truck passes by on the distant road, the same kind that once carried her brother's false promises, and she smiles faintly. Her phone buzzes. A message from Linda appears.
Case closed.
They dropped the charges. Grace sets the phone aside and exhales deeply. The weight she carried for months finally lifts. She looks at her house, her home, and whispers to herself, "Some houses hold memories. Others hold lessons." She stands, steps inside, and gently locks the door, not out of fear, but peace. The same lock that once shut her out now closes behind her with quiet strength. For the first time in a long while, the silence feels like freedom. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel. Awesome Visual Story.